Hey guys, so this is our next story, chapter 7, Birth of the Inca Empire. So we've talked about the Maya, we've talked about the Aztec, and now we're going to talk about the Inca. So, big question. The big question is what factors contributed to the Inca Empire becoming the largest pre Columbian empire? Big question. What factors contributed to the Inca Empire becoming the largest pre Columbian empire? Now, pre Columbian, the prefix pre means before. So if you say pre Columbian, you're talking about the time period in this area before before Columbus discovered this area, or the Spaniards did. Okay, so chapter 7, the birth of the Inca Empire. Travel south in your mind now, leaving behind the volcanic mountains and jungles of Central America. As you wind your way down into South America, you will cross the equator. You will pass through more lush rainforest in the Amazon River basin. Continue west in the direction of the Pacific Ocean. You will soon discover that there is no way to reach the ocean without crossing the Andes Mountains. This mountain range is one of the highest and longest in the world. In the 1300s, the Aztecs created an empire in Mexico, and the Inca built an empire in the Andes. These civilizations developed nearly 3,000 miles apart. There is no evidence to suggest that the two empires had any direct knowledge of one another. What they're saying is, even though they were only 3,000 miles apart, they can't give you a definite answer whether or not these two cultures, even though they were coming about at the same time, they had any interaction with one another. There's no proof. According to legend, the sun god chose the birthplace of the Inca civilization. He chose Cuzco, located in a beautiful valley in the present day Peru, as the place where the Quechua people should settle. They lived mostly in small farming communities for about 200 years. Then, in 1438, a powerful enemy threatened the Quechua's way of life. The Quechua defeated this enemy, greatly increasing their power. The size of the Quechua army grew. When Cuzco, with Cuzco as their base, they began to conquer other indigenous groups throughout the Andes Mountains. An empire was born. Now, I'm sorry about the name, but Quechua, I think it's Quechua. I'm having to look down at the pronunciation each time I say it, just because I don't want to mess it up too bad. But basically, it's according to legend. Legend is something that you can't prove. It's like a myth. The sun god chose the birthplace of the Inca civilization, and he chose this place, the Quechua. Oh wait, it's Quechua. Quechua? It's Quechua. Sorry, Quechua. He chose their people to settle here in the Andes Mountains. Now, they had some enemies, but they were able to defeat these enemies. Now, as their power increased, also the sizes of their army grew, which meant that they could easily go around the Andes Mountains areas and control other groups. And it says indigenous. So that means these groups are from this area. They're from the Andes Mountains area. So as they were taking over these groups, the land of the Inca grew vastly, which helped create such a large empire. So very similar to the Aztecs, to where you had the triple threat thing going on with with three city states, they were also conquering lands and taking that as their own. You're going to see that that is a common theme throughout early civilizations. The Quechua called their empire. I have it. One second. One second. On the wrong page. The Quechua called their empire Tawab-Tin-Soyu. Tawab-Tin-Soyu, meaning land of four quarters. They divided the empire into four areas or quarters, some much larger than others. Cusco was at the center of the empire where the four quarters met. The empire extended across the high Andes Mountains. From there, it dipped into the sheltered valleys, windy plains, and the dry coastal deserts. In the 1500s, the Spanish changed the empire's name to Inca. Today, we use the name Inca to describe the largest pre-Columbian empire ever built. So the name Inca actually comes from the Spanish. So if you were talking about social classes with your project, you need to pay attention to this part right here. So we have a pyramid of power. Now, mostly with a pyramid of power, this is like a hierarchy, you're going to notice that at the base, you have the most populated, the commoners. So that means there's more commoners than there are at any other level. The next, you have government officials, including priests, judges, army officers, and tax collectors. Governors and Sapa Inca. Now, because it's a pyramid, at the very top, it's the smallest part, meaning that you do not have very many Sapa Inca. You don't have that many governors compared to commoners and other officials. So your place in a pyramid of power determined like how many there were. So if you were a commoner, there's way more commoners than there are probably anything else, even combined. There were more government officials than governors. So just keep that in mind, okay? So in the days of the empire, the term Inca, meaning king or lord, referred only to the members of the royal family. The Inca called their emperor Sapa Inca. He ran a strong, organized government from the capital of Cusco. If you think of the Inca society structure as a pyramid, Sapa Inca was at the top. He ruled supreme. That means he ruled above all other. His word was it. The Inca believed that the Sapa Inca was descendant of Inti, the sun god. Heredity determined who would become emperor, meaning when the emperor died, his son would become the next ruler. If the Sapa Inca had more than one son, he chose the strongest of his sons to replace him. People treated the Sapa Inca like a god. He lived in a magnificent palace, dressed in gold-fringed clothing, and ate off gold plates. Servants carried him in a golden litter. Powerful men surrounded the Sapa Inca. 4 governors helped him rule each of the empire's four quarters. Most government officials were nobles and members of the royal family. They included priests, judges, army officers, and tax collectors. The bottom of the pyramid consisted of the rest of society, commoners, who worked for the emperor. So the emperor was basically just like you would see in Egyptian cultures or anywhere other. They believed that the Sapa Inca was a descendant of the sun god, meaning that he himself was godlike. So whatever he said went. And when he died, just like you do in the royal family you have today all over the world, the oldest son, this was the son, received the power. If he had more than one son, it was whoever he thought was the strongest. But let's say he didn't have any sons. Then it could go to a brother or a nephew, whoever the Sapa Inca thought was best for the position. But I, with my research, I don't really think they had many female emperors or empresses. I don't think Egypt had female pharaohs, but they didn't work. They didn't last very long compared to the men. So, so here's a picture of the Inca Empire, and it was divided into four parts. You have the blue right here, the yellow, green is like right here, and then red. So Sapa Inca and the golden litter, it's kind of like a thing. Like when you have Egyptians, the pharaoh never touched his feet never touched the ground when he walked outside. So they would always carry him around as kind of seat on sticks. So this is South America, and you're on the west coast. This is also the area that is into the Ring of Fire, so they were very um, tectonically active, meaning they have earthquakes and volcanoes and things. Giving food from mountain peaks to coastal plains. The success of the empire depended upon the commoners, most of whom were farmers. The Inca cultivated many different crops, including potatoes, corn, beans, peanuts, mango, chili peppers, tomatoes, and squash. Manico. Manicos. Manico. Cotton grew in the hot, dry coastal regions. And quinoa, it's a type of starch, like a rice type thing, thrived in cooler, wetter mountain areas. Terrace farming was a very common practice in the Andes Mountains, like in the Maya and Inca transformed hillsides into terraces or steps of flat land. They built raised aqueducts and irrigated their crops with water from mountain springs. The terraces helped trap water, preventing erosion and runoff. The Inca produced an abundance of food for the ever growing empire, working with simple hoes, sod breaking clubs, and foot plows. So here is an example of a terrace farming. It kind of looks like stairs in a way. And it would prevent erosion, part of which comes from like the water rolling down the hills and stuff like that. Potatoes, potatoes, potatoes. Potatoes are native to the Andes highlands, provided food year round. The Inca grew different varieties of potatoes along terraced garden slopes. The mountainous climate with hot days and cold nights was perfect for freeze drying. Potatoes baked in the sun during the day and froze at night. This early method of preserving crops meant the Inca could store food for later use. I did not know that. All right, government organizations, tribal rules for the commoners. With each new conquest, the emperor acquired new land and more commoners to work the land. The emperor controlled the land and the crops grown in it. Commoners were organized into family units of 10 to 20 people. Governors divided the land among each unit, or Ayo. Each Ayo cultivated 3 separate plots. One plot was for feeding the priests and the gods, another for feeding the emperor and his nobles, and another for feeding themselves. The governors collected some of the harvest crops and placed them in storehouses throughout the empire. Storehouses provided feed traveling. I'm sorry. Let me start all over. Storehouses produced, fed traveling armies, and served as disaster reliefs in times of emergencies. So this is like a farmland type illustration. You have one that is used for government officials and the emperor. You have one that is for priests and the gods, and then you have one to feed yourself. I'm going to guess that probably the smaller of the 3 is to feed yourself. I'm just going to guess. I don't know. So we have harvesting crops. As you can see, they're harvesting, they're tying stuff together, putting stuff in blankets. And then this is where they would do at the storehouse. So they would have to give a percentage or an amount of the food grown and put in the storage unit or storage house for later use. The Inca did not use any form of money. Like the Aztecs, they had a tribute or a tax system. The government collected tributes in two ways. First, people paid a good tax based on the number of people in their AU. For example, commoners only kept about 1/3 of their harvest. They spent 2/3 to the gods and nobles. People pay tribute to with pottery, textiles, and gems. Textiles is like clothing. The second government tax was a service or labor tax called mita. I lost my place. Each household chose someone, often the father, to fulfill the government mita requirement. Some people served in the army, others built roads and buildings. Still others worked in the mines, mining copper, tin, gold, or silver. As a result, the mita tax, the Inca built the most advanced road system in pre-Columbia South America. So you had to pay a tax, two separate taxes. One was to the gods and the nobles, and the other one was kind of like a labor tax. And one person from your family, usually the male, because the females could do everything else at home, would build the roads, which they, if you do research on how they built the roads in any society, like ancient Rome or the Inca or the Aztecs or whatever, it's really interesting in that some of them still exist today. That's how well they built them. Or they would mine. And this made the Inca rich. In exchange for tribute, the government took care of the people. It made sure that the people did not go hungry. The government cared for the sick and elderly. It made sure people, I'm sorry, it made sure people in the empire had homes so they would not be homeless. As long as the people obeyed the Sapa Inca's rules, they received good care. If people disobeyed, they received severe punishment. If a farmer took food from the emperor's field, he risked being severely punished. If he condemned the gods, he would surely lose his life. Okay, a color-coded system, and that is called the quipu. The quipu. This is a knot system. The governors used quipus, am I saying that right? Yep. To keep track of crop yields, taxes paid, and taxes owed. Each governor had its own quipu for keeping records. A quipu looked like a bundle of colorful threads. Strings hung from a central rope. The governors tied the string in knots. The types of knots and other colors of the string help governors interpret calculations and records. That seems kind of difficult. Superior network of roads. Inca roads created a network across different types of land. Using stone and primitive tools, primitive means basic, simple, what you have, Mita workers followed the land's natural terrain. They chiseled stone out of mountain slopes, building tunnels to connect cities from one end of the empire to the other. They laid steps up rocky cliffs. They stacked stones and floating reeds to form castaways over marshlands. Their rope bridges, probably the first suspension bridges in the world, spanned deep valleys and rivers along the way. They built low stone walls to keep desert sands from covering the flat, wide coastal roads. They edged the road with stone gutters to prevent flooding. They even built taboos or inns for travelers. Thousands of workers maintained the empire's 24,000 miles of road. 24,000 miles. The government primarily used the roads. Armies patrolled the roads, making sure commoners did not travel along them without permission. Because the Inca had no written language, the emperor kept in touch with their governors through a swift footed messenger. The emperor's messengers traveled across the empires carrying keep quipus, those little knots. The knotted ropes contained records of everything from population figures to troop numbers and size of animal herds. The messengers also memorized messages and transferred them orally from one person to another. Orally means like talking. They used relay stations that were set up every mile along the roads. As one messenger approached the other, he blew into a conch shell trumpet, alerting the next messenger to be ready to run. The runner told his messenger to the next as the two ran side by side. In this way, multiple messengers carried the same message from station to station across many miles. In fact, this highly trained sprinter traveled more than 100 miles in a single day in order to deliver messages. That's a lot of miles. In the land of four quarters, all roads led to Cusco. All right, so let's do the math. Calculating time. It is about 2,300 miles between the present day city of Quito, Ecuador, and Santiago, Chile. Today it takes about 5 hours to fly from one to the other. If the Inca messengers traveled 100 miles a day, approximately how many days would it take to deliver the message from Quito to Santiago? Well, it's 100 miles a day, so 23 days. So, anyway, so that is the Inca Empire, an explanation on how it was created. So, if you need to listen to this again, that's fine. If you would like to listen to it via the Amplify, you can go to your Clever, go to the app on Amplify, and find the story. I will talk to y'all later.